Good evening, this is Daenerys the Human, and welcome to this battlefield tactics guide for the House of the Brutii in Rome Total War. We'll assess their army composition, both pre and post Marian, and try out the armies in battle to ascertain the ideal approach to gain ultimate victory. If you haven't already seen the campaign strategy guide that accompanies this video, then you can find it now above and in the description below. Here we are then with the roster for the Roman Brutii, and they of course have themselves an incredible set of units. The range on the Romans is one of the best of any faction, and of course the infantry is second to pretty much none. They have solid enough archers, strong cavalry, and a great range of artillery, if that's the kind of thing you like to use. Now, they do lack the likes of chariots and elephants, but to be honest, they do have some fun toys with the Arcani, the gladiators, the incendiary pigs, and the dogs, so it's hard to really complain when you've got all of these choices. What this means is that you can play the Brutii in lots of different ways. Now, in terms of infantry, we are of course lacking the proper phalanx. You can of course hire some of those mercenary hoplites throughout the game, so I don't think that's the biggest deal. You can of course also turn triarii into phalanx with a little bit of modding. I'll put a little link up at the top there. But we are by and large just going to be reviewing the vanilla game. So I think what we need to do is look at pre and post Marian, because there is a big difference between those two sets of armies. Post-Marian, the Romans are absolutely demonic, but pre-Marian, they're pretty much alongside the other factions. They don't have the huge advantage that we see later on. So we're going to take this army here into battle against the Macedonians, the kind of battle you're likely to face in this early pre-Marian stage, and later we'll come back with a post-Marian army and take on, say, the Egyptians, who will be the kind of army you'll face when you've expanded further across the map. But before we do that, we'll go to the campaign screen, simply because I want to show you how you can get some of these units, and that might give us a bit more context before we head into battle. Here on the campaign map, we're going to look at the large city's army barracks, because of course as soon as you get a huge city in Italy or Sicily, you'll enact the Marian reforms, so it's very unlikely you're going to end up with the urban barracks with the Triarii of Experience 1, because chances are your city will be in Italy. However, this still gives us a fair few options, so let's have a look at them. The peasants and the town watch, of course, are cheap and cheerful, very cheap upkeep and recruitment cost. They're going to be your garrison units. And from the large towns you get Hastati, minor cities are Principe, and the large cities are Triarii. Of course, these two guys, sword lads with the javelins, and the Triarii are the anti-cav specialists. Now, of course, we do also have the Velite Gladiator over here. Now, these are quite interesting and, of course, come from the arena. I do think they are a unit we want to take a little look at when we're on the battlefield. Of course, the Julii get themselves the Samnite version and the Scipioni get the Murmillo version. They are really the only difference between the three Roman factions. So it should be noted that this guy is a little bit unique if you like to play with unique units. Of course, there is one other unit over here that we can get, the Arcani, who are very, very fun indeed, but a little bit ridiculous. They're going to come with +3 experience though, because they come from the awesome Temple of Mars, so they're always going to look pretty darn strong. Those stats are grand. If you're in like forest or place you can hide, you might be using them, but I don't think we're going to highlight them too much here today. But that's your infantry roster, and basically for the Romans, these aren't too expensive. They're pretty cheap and cheerful. It's definitely cheaper than when we get to post-Marian, but equally you just might want to bear in mind where you're building them, because yes, you want them to be a town that is quite well upgraded. Tarentum you can build up quite quickly, so it's not the worst place to be building all of your infantry. Over in Salona, I've actually built us into a huge city to highlight the fact that whilst you will very rarely get this opportunity, the siege engineer from the huge city will give you all of the artillery toys that you get post-Marian as well. The artillery does not change, meaning you can in theory get the likes of the heavy onager and the repeating ballistae if that's what you want to go for. These are not going to change from that. What does change, however, are the Roman archers, and my days, these guys are very basic indeed. They still have a tactical use in the battlefield, of course, but they are pretty darn pathetic. They don't have the long range either, so you will very much be looking forward to those guys upgrading. I don't think you'll be having too many archers in the early game, but the Velites are quite useful and don't change too much when you upgrade into the post-Marian armies. What will be looked forward to, though, is the cavalry, because the Equites are kind of quite simple, really. They only have 4 morale, which out of 12 is pretty significant. Likes of the Auxilia or the Hastati have 6 morale, so these guys do know to be routed quite easily. Cavalry Auxilia probably not going to be used very much before the Marian reforms, but they are quite a useful, particularly tactically useful unit for you to use. And of course you have the War Dogs and Incendiary Pigs should you want them. These 3 units aren't going to change very much post-Marian, but of course your selection of main cav very much will. So we'll head into the battle and we'll see some of this pre-Marian army in action. Here we are on the battlefield then, and as discussed, these archers are not going to be that effective, but against an army like Macedonia or indeed Greece, the team most likely of your early enemies, well, you are going to want to be using your skirmishers and your archers if at all possible, because their main weakness, of course, is their lack of manoeuvrability. A lot of spikes. Now, if you're facing the likes of Macedonia, they do have some strong cavalry as well. The Greeks do not. So the likes of Macedonia are actually slightly more dangerous. So that's something very much to bear in mind. The longer you can skirmish, the better position you're in. Now, I would say your main advantage, being the Romans, is that you have yourselves the Pilum. If you're on very hard, you're probably going to find that a face-on against the spikes is going to end very badly. Indeed, our archers are not in a very good position right now. It's probably a good time for us, though, to take a good look at our infantry units here. I've got them set up this way because the key thing in Rome Total War is morale, and indeed, whilst, of course, the normal way of setting this up would be to put the Hastati at the front with the Principes behind and the Triarii behind that. No, I'm going to do it this way because I really want us to not have routes. See, the Hastati here actually only have themselves 6 morale, and the Principes are up to 8. Now, we need to bear that in mind because the Principes are basically just 2 better on defence, but with a bit more morale than the Hastati. They're actually very, very similar indeed, but you don't get the morale information on the screen here. Meanwhile, the Triarii are, of course, a very different kind of unit. I've got them out here on the flanks, and indeed Triarii, and they've got themselves plenty of defence, and they're good against the cavalry, which is going to be kind of important in this kind of a battle. It's going to be vital you find a way of dealing with them. And on this occasion, they've got their cav on the wrong side for me. So actually, some of them are over there. So I'm actually going to send, just to make sure we deal with them, the cavalry will be cleared out. They're running their light lances into all of our lovely gladiators, which is fine. That will keep them busy. That was kind of the point of them standing there on that wing. They've won that pretty easily. Okay, they're going to get themselves back into that position. That's the whole point of those flanking troops over there. So let's have a quick talk about the Velite Gladiator, because actually they're very, very similar to the others. So the Scipii Murmillo has the exact same stats, except fast moving on the Velite. This is the only one which has that. And I would say that's a key thing here. It's partly why I had them standing out here in this little flanking position in the trees, because they are going to, if nothing else, they take 2 turns. They are, you know, expensive for a half-size unit, but they are going to be potentially effective, particularly against the likes of Macedonia. Now, it doesn't say with the spearhead that they're good against cavalry, but they're certainly very fast, and they are going to be a good flanking unit against the likes of these phalanx armies. You'll be wanting a lot of that. Now, I do slightly fear that the general has eaten up my javelins, but overall, throwing the javelins into these guys is going to be key, and then we want to hold them in position long enough to flank them. That is why taking out the Cav of Macedonia is extra important. Okay, so, by the way, in case you're wondering, the Scipioni, while they look the same, the Julii actually, their Samnites actually have extra attack, their sword users. So Triarii, they've done their job. Nice work. We're going to try and get these 2 units out to the flank, because as long as we've largely dealt with their cav, let's just get the dogs on him actually and get our cav around the back, and we'll deal with all of that later. Okay, so I've got the Hastati in behind trying to deal with the javelin situation. They've thrown theirs, so that's fine. We're going to try and get them around. Perfect. Okay, the general's been hit by all the javelins in the world, which is quite convenient for us. We have tried to flank them, but apparently they have caught us out. This is where you'll probably see a lack of flanking is going to cause us issues. because we are going to get poked. So I'm going to leave these guys for a little while just to see how it all goes down, but I don't think it always goes too well. Against basic guys like militia hoplites, we'll definitely be able to win. Over here against levy pikemen, it could be slightly more complicated. So yes, we'll get those to start into a flanking position. Velites will continue to throw javelins in, and the archers will continue to do their work. Now you can see, this is really what you're trying to do against the likes of Macedonia and Greece. We're trying to get a flanking manoeuvre, because now we're going to start getting into the mass rout. You can of course do this with cavalry. The Romans in particularly the early era though don't have a great selection of cav. We'll just deal with them without cavalry on this occasion. Hammer and anvil is a very classic sort of tactic in ancient warfare, but as the Romans we kind of lack the hammer. We have a big strong anvil here in our infantry, but as you can see, whilst these Principes are holding for a while, they're doing their job. They're not going to be winning that. They are getting chunked down pretty brutally. So let's go and get our reinforcements into position, and we'll finish this off. Really, all we're looking for in these early pre-Marian battles is to try and really use our very strong infantry as much as possible. Use the javelins to weaken them before you can finish them off with superior infantry. If you've got the cav, by all means use it. But yeah, whilst like the archers and the javelins aren't the most amazing things in the world, they will contribute to your overall massive pile of pilum, which basically broke the general before the battle even begun. And yeah, this victory, this isn't very hard. I thought we might have a little bit of problem. But indeed, you can see here just the sheer strength of a load of these units. They are very strong indeed, and certainly in terms of the infantry. And you have a decent enough supporting cast with the likes of dogs and the Velitic gladiators, whereby I think you can pretty much play around as much as you like. But you know what? We'll head back and look at the post-Marian army, because that is where a lot of the real filthy, juicy units come into it, and you're mostly going to be using those in your campaign, so let's head into them. The post-Marian army is a big upgrade for the Romans, and indeed we should probably have a small comparison here, because the Principes and the early legionary cohort are indeed equivalent units, both coming out of the minor cities barracks. But the Principes are definitely the weaker unit. You can see here 7 attack, 11 missile has now gone up to 9 and 13. The defence also has gone from 16 to 17, and the charge bonus from 2 to 3. Now, the Principes are cheaper than the early legionary cohort, and you will indeed need to have a little bit more finances for these post-Marian armies, but with that comes extra training and extra discipline. You'll find that they start to pick up new stats. You can see at the bottom there in the description, good morale, good stamina. The morale's gone up from 7 out of 12 to 10 out of 12, and that discipline and that training means that their stamina has improved as well. Now, all of that means that this unit is going to stay in fight a lot longer than most. Very few units actually have 10 morale, and getting these out of a minor city is a big boon for us. Now, that's a similar story with some other units. The Velites here at 5772 and the Light Auxilia at 5772 look the same, but you can see there that they now have good stamina. The highly trained units are showing improvements. So you'll find little improvements here or there, even on units that seem very similar. Where it is very different though is these archers. So let's have a quick look at those. 3 attack, 2 defense, 1 charge. Well, in terms of that, that's basic really, isn't it? That's just how they're going to face in the melee. 3, 6, 1. Slight improvement, nothing too massive, but look at the missiles there. 7 up to 8, but more importantly, we now have long range. We also have things like good stamina. We've actually lost the fast moving, but I'm not sure that that's hugely useful or too much of a loss for us. This is a big increase. The long range of the Archer Auxilia mean that these are far more effective, and you're going to want to start using these in your army, especially if you run out of Cretan archer mercenaries. But really, where some of the biggest differences are going to take place are with the cav. So Roman cav and the equite. Now the equite, as I said, have only 4 morale. Good stamina, fast moving. Indeed, the Roman cav match that, but they have much better morale, up to 6, which is the same as Astarte, but 6, 12 and 5 we're up to 6, 15 and 5. So they're going to fight longer, not only because of morale, but because of defense. But not only that, we now get many more types like Legionary Cav, Praetorian Cav. We'll look at those guys in a bit more depth, but we should probably head into the campaign map just to have a look at how this all looks from our different building browsers. Of course, post-Marian units are almost always better than the pre-Marian, but there is one small exception, and that is your anti-cav. Now, the Auxilia here are not terrible units whatsoever, but you must remember that these come from the large towns of only 2,000 men, whereas Triarii, their equivalent anti-cav, come out of large cities of 12,000. In terms of the infrastructure, they come from very different places, and Auxilia don't do too bad considering. They are 5, 2, 16 with some good stamina, whereas Triarii are 8, 3, 18, but this time with good morale. They're both anti-cav units, they'll both hold fairly well. Triarii are obviously objectively better, but you know what, I don't mind the Auxilia coming out of your large towns. It means you can get plenty of them on the field easily enough. You're going to use your legionaries as your main force anyway, but whilst they're not quite as good, I'm happy enough with this personally. You might though want to stock up on Triarii before you hit the post-Marian era, just so you've got some around if indeed you prefer it that way. With these first 5 infantry units covered, then it's probably time to look at the mainstay of your army, the legionary cohort. These only take 1 turn, so in general, over the Praetorians and Urbans, you will be choosing to get the legions, but they are so good it barely even matters. So 9, 13 missiles still, and the 22 defense, good morale, good stamina. They're on 10 morale like their Triarii equivalents from the large cities. Oh, these guys are demonic. And yes, of course, you can upgrade to the likes of Urban Cohort and Praetorians, who are both immense as well. There are obviously also the first cohorts, which we'll see in the battle in a minute, but your options are just exceptional. Even the early legionary cohorts are pretty good. You will have no issue when it comes to recruiting these guys. And of course, if you're the Brutii, you're moving eastward. You're moving to an area that's already quite well developed, and that means you're going to continue to have access to the likes of these legionaries in many of the cities that you take. Unlike, for example, the Julii, who in these barbarian towns can struggle to get as many of those troops as they would like. Down in Croton, we have the missile and the cavalry units that are now available to us, although the cav in many ways looks quite familiar. We have war dogs, incendiary pigs, and cavalry auxilia as before, but as discussed, our equites, who before were only really useful for chasing down skirmishers and basically dealing with routing units, now we have Roman cav, who can be a light hammer to the anvil of your infantry. But really, where it gets delicious are these guys, the legionary cavalry out of large cities and the Praetorian cavalry out of huge cities. Whilst these take 2 turns and are very expensive indeed, they are well worth it. They give you so much more variety to your tactical options on the battlefield. Before pre-Marian, we had to be quite tentative with our cav. We either needed a lot of it, or we needed to very much use them as the final blow in the hammer and anvil. But no. Now, if we want to just run straight from an infantry line, you probably can do it with these guys. They are immense. As for the missiles, they stayed very much the same. As I said, our artillery is the same as it ever was, with the light auxilia a light upgrade and the archers a significant one. But you know what, we should probably head into the battlefield, because the basic summary is this: it's more expensive and sometimes takes more turns, but my goodness, do you have a lot more power, a lot more defense, and a lot more variety. So let's head into the battlefield and see them in action. Here we are then, ladies and gents, with our full legionnaires looking beautiful. And yes, a good early point here that if your enemies have onagers, it's a good idea to go and take them out before they destroy everything, as I'm explaining why they're so special. So these are one of the 2 special units. We have ourselves our first cohorts, which have the eagle to inspire nearby troops and usually have 50% extra men when they're not being demolished by an onager. As in any battle on Rome Total War, you want to try and make sure that you've got advantages in terms of the different areas of your armies. So it's quite often going to be the case that you're going to have the best infantry. So to make sure you can utilise that, you want to make sure that they don't have the artillery advantage. I have given them some artillery because Egypt can indeed get them. Many of the eastern factions can. So we're going to go take those out with our lovely cav here. As explained, they should be able to just smash their way through a front line. So that's what we're going to do right now. So of course we have ourselves a very, very strong infantry line, and we're going to hope that they can win the day. But of course the Egyptians do have some very strong units indeed. We're just going to plough into these and hopefully, yeah, we'll get the break on them pretty much straight away. You can see the Praetorians actually, rather than the Legionnaires, haven't quite done the job. But if we're lucky, there we go. We're going to try and go straight through because chariots aren't going to end well for us. Little note, don't send them into chariots. But, you know, once the heavy onage is taken out, we can now focus on some main tactics. And the main tactics are, of course, making good use of our infantry. One advantage that they do have, of course, is the Pharaoh's bowmen, and you're most likely you are not going to have the advantage over the Egyptians when it comes to missile units. Unlike the Seleucids, they don't have too much in terms of archers. The Armenians have the cataphract archers, but they don't have basic ones like this, which can hit as hard with such range. So of course we can pull out our special Testudo to go and defend us against all of that, and that can allow us to hold position and use some of our missiles and waste away theirs if indeed you need more time. Now, assuming you haven't wasted one of your cavalry units running into chariots, you should be in a good position now to try and pick those off with your missiles before they head in with their infantry. Of course, in this particular position here with all the Testudos, we are not going to take many hits at all in spite of all the missiles we can see coming in. What we will do, however, is have to keep a close eye on their infantry because we are quite vulnerable to melee if indeed they want to come in and make that a problem. Looks like they're going to start moving forward, so I think we'll get into the rest of the battle. With their men fast approaching, then we need to make sure that we have the tactical advantage once again, and that's going to be our pilum, because against these kind of immovable objects we just need to javelin them to death. For some reason that click went way too far. Now yes, whilst these guys do have their spears to defend, there are no shields, so we can do some good damage with these kind of units. Now you can see here we have been cleared off on the flank of our cavalry battle, and if you are out cavalried, which may well be the case in some of these battles, then make sure you are tight enough, you've got anti-cav on the flanks, and indeed you're making some sensible tactical decisions. You'll probably find, yes, this kind of battle here is not going to end well. So again, keep an eye on who is appearing where on the battlefield. If you need to, then you might need to supplement certain areas. That's why I would always put a second line of defence and make sure your flanks are better protected, because yeah, while the frontal assault is probably going to end quite well for us, it's very easy for this all to fall apart. Roman cav are not there to take out Nile cavalry, and they're certainly not going to do well when you get swamped from the flanks. So let's have another little look at this once again. This time we're going to get us just a little bit tighter, because as you can see, flanking can be a big problem when you didn't bring enough cavalry to the fight. The previous battle there should hopefully have highlighted a few things that you might want to consider, but let's just really tighten this up and do it properly this time and think about what we've got. So both armies have a selection of units. That's kind of what I wanted to show here, and their advantage is obviously their cavalry. They have lots of chariots and various other cavalry like camel archers and Nile cav, as well as these horrible chariots. So what we want to do, of course, is take advantage that we have a huge amount of potential missiles. Now, we do have a good advantage in terms of these guys, but I do probably still want to try and take other onager in the rear. What I might do is just send the Roman cav, see if we can just do a accidental flank without them noticing. If I actually pay attention, it might work, but the main thing is you want to hold back and use our missile advantage. Pick off some of these big chunky targets like these cav over here. So I would always recommend against someone awkward like Egypt with some special units to keep things slow and steady and make sure you keep yourself tight. Infantry doesn't want to get split up, doesn't want to get surrounded like we saw last time. So this time we're going to throw some rocks around and see if we can cause a little bit of trouble. You can see they're going to send in their cavalry to try and take us down, and this is why it probably makes sense to try and keep some of these guys around. Send them over there. They're just going to pile on in, are they? That's fine. We'll try and get our infantry in as well. General, we'll just swing around. We'll see what we can do. But if we can take these guys out, then I'll be very happy with this. Okay, perfect, perfect, perfect. Camel archers are a little bit irritating. Ballistas should be shooting in at them. And with the cavalry, oh lovely, with the cavalry winning their early skirmish, we can get ourselves back into position. Didn't need those infantry as much as I thought. And we can go and bring our cav as well back into the main fight. Just go and bring yourself into position. Just make sure you're defending what you need to. Oh, there we are. I remembered my guys, and we're going to send them over there. They're being shot down by chariot archers, and you can see if they get caught, they're going to rout. That's just what happens. So not much of an upgrade on the Equites, but a little bit of an upgrade. Worth bearing in mind that they are not superheroes. Right, we're going to see some javelins come in. It would have been nice to clear out the Onager, but it's not the end of the world. They don't want to be throwing their men away either. Here comes the general, and to be honest, he's got himself right next to our first cohort. This side is where their cavalry is, so it's probably worth still swinging out there. There goes their general, and actually, if anything, we probably want to slightly rearrange the angles because they are kind of wonking us a little bit. But aside from the ballistas getting themselves caught out in the rearrangement, mostly this is much better. We have ourselves in position to throw some javelins in before the battle commences. Our cavalry are trying to take out some of the units at the flank, but to be honest, they're probably better off just returning to defend us. We're not going to win the cavalry battle single-handedly. Sometimes you might if you brought more along, but you've always got to consider the specifics of every individual battle. Okay, they've now re-won that flank for us, and in general, well, to be honest, I feel quite confident in this part of the battlefield, so I think we're just going to start swinging our men around. Now, you might actually have a stronger line than me here. These are very basic. They've got no experience. They've got no armour or bonus shields or anything like that. And yeah, we're just going to start pouring into them. I do have some early legionary cohorts in here as well. Obviously, are not quite as strong. Let's not get these cavalry completely murdered, but we can try. Maybe take out those Ferris bowmen because they look very, very much out of position now. So yeah, you can see our infantry are going to generally win as long as we are not stupid about it and get themselves smashed into by cavalry. Using your cavalry carefully to maintain your infantry advantage is always going to be the key. See, especially against an enemy like Egypt, it can be awkward. See where your strengths lie and see what you can do to negate theirs. To be honest, with that infantry victory, we pretty much seem to have won the battle actually. There's a bit of mopping up to do. There's still some bowmen back there. But yeah, there we are. Probably a decent example of how messy battles can be, really. There's no one approach, of course. It entirely depends upon... Well, that's a nice mountain. It entirely depends upon what the enemy are bringing to the party. In a battle with this, with so many chaotic chariots, yeah, keep things tight, but just you need to spot where your advantages are. The nice thing really about this Roman army is that you have so many options. If you want to go all in on urban cohort, then you can probably still win most battles anyway. If you want to give yourselves a massive artillery force and defend them with a few units in a tight little spot on the hill here, you can do it. The artillery will demolish them. This obviously is a little bit of a mixture. We haven't really gone heavy in one direction. But with the Romans, if you want a heavy cavalry army, you can do it. If you want a heavy infantry army, you can do it. If you want to bombard them with artillery, you can do it. So, yes, a beautifully versatile army, and one that, even against some awkward Egyptians, we can win quite handily. And because I like to be facetious and make my point clear, we're just going to head in with a cavalry army and cause all kinds of chaos. Because why wouldn't we? Because it's good fun, that's why. So as they're getting themselves organised, yeah, we'll just stand around, we'll throw javelins in at them, we'll cause them all sorts of pain and chaos. Why not? We actually haven't really looked at these guys yet, and they are very, very useful. Very flexible unit, not too bad at mopping up troops, but also, yeah, pretty nice at just causing skirmishing chaos. And if you want to skirmish as the Romans, you can do it. Now, one thing we are now starting to do is get caught out by their own javelins, so maybe we should pull back at this point. But when they're starting to get themselves organised, yeah, by all means, get these guys around, irritate them We've only lost a couple men so far. We've probably taken out a few of them as well. There we are, 3%. What we'll start probably doing in a minute though is charging forward with these guys, because that could be good fun. Let's just send in our Praetorians for a charge, because why not just demolish your fellow Romans with a catastrophic cavalry charge? Okay, we got an urban cohort over here. Let's see how they fare. So this is kind of ridiculous. It's not really how you're supposed to fight, but you know what? We've actually got a break, which is kind of hilarious. So, you know, we'll just charge on in, and at this point it's just all going to melt like the proverbial cheese. Oh, excellent. These guys can come in and mop up that flank as well. Moppy, moppy, moppy. And there we go. Okay, you know what? This could definitely... I wouldn't recommend this as the most efficient way to use the army. But it's a good point that you can really use this army however you want. If you like a cavalry-only force to demolish the enemy, then go and do it. Go and skirmish, go and charge them down. There are so many flexible options when it comes to the Romans. You can pretty much do whatever you like. We don't have horse archers yet until barbarian invasion, but in general you can pretty much take your choice of nonsense. I mean, like, these are legionary cohorts, urban cohorts, Praetorians we have here, and we'll just absolutely piled on top of them and finish them off. There's one left and we might as well take him down. Oh, I love this army. It's absolutely glorious. Someone apparently... No, it's all over. As I say, not necessarily the battle plan of geniuses, but Squeaky Narrator Man is very excited by this. But it's a good point that the Romans can pretty much take whichever tactic they want, make it work for them, and completely annihilate the enemy. Thank you for joining me today on this Battlefield Tactics Guide for the Roman Brutii. Do let me know which of the factions you'd like to see next. Along with the Brutii, we have already covered Armenia, Scythia, Carthage, Greece and the Britons. I do tend to jump between cultures, so anything non-Roman is possible next. Do include your own tips about this or any other factions. It may well make its way onto the next guide. Finally, thanks to all my channel members and patrons for supporting the increase in content here on the channel. If you want to support the channel yourself, then you can follow the links in the description below. For now though, I will leave you. I am Thomas, this is The Nerds to Human, and this has been a Battlefield Tactics Guide for the Roman Brutii in Rome Total War. Thank you friends, and bye bye. Send in the camels, those shiny, smelly camels. Oh, the anarchy loosed upon the world, apart from over here where we're kind of routed. Stupidity got us into this mess, stupidity will get us out of it, damn it. We will have a last stand at some point, but it's not today.